The Beats Studio Pro released last month to universal acclaim. Positive reviews across the board. I've been using them now for about a month, desperately trying to like them because everybody else seems to, but here's the thing, they kind of suck. Problems arise as soon as you take them out of their pretty recycled packaging. Their build quality is frankly atrocious, amongst the worst of any modern headphone I've used over $100. The plastic squeaks as you stretch them over your ears, they creak when adjusting fit, when chewing, when running, walking, laying down on your side, basically doing anything other than NPC behavior. The buttons, whose layout make little sense, feel cheap as all get out, and yep, squeak the ear cup whenever pressed. Pushing the Beats logo on the left ear cup triggers play, pause, next and previous track, as well as all call and voice assistant functions. Pushing the upper half of this circle raises the volume, and the lower half the opposite. And then on the opposite ear, the right ear, there is a single, tiny, super weirdly located button. It's slightly off axis from the bottom, so hard to find. It's pitched at an angle, and it's on the thin outside headband rather than the much larger and accessible ear cup. If you can manage to find the button, it will control power, pairing, and transparency, active noise cancel toggling. The buttons do, well, all of them perform too many functions. They require both hands because they're on both sides, and they feel so chintzy. Get the headphones around your ears, and most will find that the cups are slightly too shallow and small, pinching, folding, or touching the ear's helix, as they have no pocket that's found on basically every other headphone. I do not have this problem. As a tiny-eared lad, the entirety of my ear fits inside this hole, but Benjamin, for example, the top of his ear is hitting the actual ear pad. The headphones, however, on my head do clamp tightly, to the point where they give me a headache after about 1 to 2 hours of listening. The fit just isn't that great. Luckily, I don't often get a headache because I can't wear them for 1 to 2 hours because my ears sweat out in a hot itch fit from the ultra plush ear pads, which, while yes, very soft, have shockingly little breathability. They're also not removable, nor replaceable. Super sustainable. Okay, in fairness, these aren't your run-of-the-mill Bluetooth headphones, and they do pack some extra features that are super cool. First off, they come in brown. Love it. I finally have a companion to my Zune. Second, I can connect to my Zune via the included 3.5mm headphone cable. Now, I've seen a few reviews mention that these headphones work passively, but that is not true. When you insert the 3.5mm connector, a switch inside the connector barrel turns the headphones on, but they do indeed need to be powered on. If they're dead or if they're turned off, no worky. You can, however, charge them via USB-C while using them, and if you're near a laptop, an iPad, an Android phone, or presumably an iPhone 15, you can even send audio over USB-C digitally to the headphone's internal DAC. Now, Apple says that this is for lossless playback, but use your head. The 3.5mm headphone jack is also lossless. It just does the conversion device side rather than headphone side. What I don't know is if, like the AirPods Max, there's an ADC that converts the incoming analog signal back to digital for processing and then back to analog for amplification. The reality is the headphones aren't good enough for it to really matter, and both the USB-C and 3.5mm cables, at least to me, sound the same. Now, wired, the cans do sound marginally better in some songs than over Bluetooth, but you would have a hard time discerning which is which in a blind test because the headphones themselves sound so... More on that later. Here's where things get wacky. When wired via the headphone jack, you can use ANC or transparency mode, but when using the USB-C DAC mode, you can't. It only uses passive noise cancellation with one of 3 EQ modes. Signature EQ, which is pretty much the default wireless profile, entertainment, which increases bass and treble, which we'll find out in a minute no one will ever want to do, and conversation, which I figure is intended for podcasts or Zoom calls, but the reality is it sounds like trash with massive bass and sub-bass roll-off. Why these EQ modes are not available via the headphone jack or Bluetooth is beyond me. But since using them is difficult anyways due to the fact that there's no audible indication anything has changed, the only way you know what mode you're in is by taking the headphones off, looking at the arbitrary LED patterns that you've committed to memory, and discovering it that way. is basically worthless. Last thing on sound modes. Head tracking is supported on iOS if you're into that. I'm not, but I am glad that it's there. Something that's not there that I wish had been added are optical ear sensors to pause when lifting up an ear cup or hanging the headphones on your neck. Their absence is a pain when you pine to prattle in a pinch. There are microphones, but they suck with very poor ambient rejection and not particularly crisp reproduction. They're serviceable, but they're not ideal. Okay, let's talk connectivity, rather the lack thereof. These headphones lack an H-series chip found in both AirPods and, frustratingly, many other Beats products, which means that these don't switch between Apple devices intelligently. If you're an Android user, you'll find yourself frustrated too, because while there is a Beats app to manage the cans, they don't support multi-point Bluetooth, which is just stupid. Every other expensive headphone on the market supports being paired to 2 or more devices simultaneously without having to switch between them for playback. They can also retain several paired devices to memory, sometimes up to 10 for easy switching. Not the Beats. You'll have to pair anew every single time you want to use a separate device. What am I to you, Apple? A troglodyte? And this leads me to Find My, which actually pisses me off because tons of reviewers saying praises of this feature without even using it. And how do I know that? Because it's worthless. Due to a lacking H2 chip, there's no support for Find Nearby, which is where, that whole world of iPhones can tell you where they are. There's also, because of that, no Lost Mode, no Notify When Found, no Notify When Left Behind, or any other useful Find My features. And that's a bummer, but it's fine. The first AirPods were like that. At least I can see their frickin' location, right? Well, bud, unless the headphones are actively turned on and connected to the sole device that they're paired to right now, nope. They don't ping their status if they're turned off, which they do automatically after being left unused for a short while. And they won't ping previously paired devices because it only remembers the most recent. So here's 2 examples. You put your Beats Studio Pro on the floor in your house. You set them down on the floor and you forget about them for a day. The app will show you that they were last seen at your house, but that's all you get. There's no location features, whatever, but no biggie. Your house ain't a mansion. You find them, you put them in your gym bag, you hop on the train, and 2 hours later, they're missing. Where are they? Well, who knows? They'll only show as last seen at your home before you lost them the first time. But yeah, sure, let's put Find My functionality in the pros column. Okay, deep breaths. Let's talk about something that these headphones do well. Noise canceling. They are fantastic at noise canceling. Way better than the AirPods Max, and I think that's due to the much denser, less comfortable ear cushion. Frankly, I think the Beats Studio Pro are even better at active noise canceling than the Sony XM5, and second to only the Bose Quiet Comfort 45 series. Now, this does mean that their performance in transparency mode is less fantastic because you just have a lot of passive canceling being done before ANC is even turned on. But really, no other headphone maker has figured out transparency mode as well as Apple anyways. So these Beats, while not AirPods level, are still pretty decent. They feel just a little bit, telephonic at times. But in my opinion, no headphones can be good if they don't sound good. And while frequency response is certainly a subjective preference, I think that objectively, these headphones measure pretty trash. I mean, look at any of the fantastic squiggles found online for these headphones, and you will see the story that my ears tell me. You get that classic boosted sub bass from your average Beats by Dre headphone, which, while not for me, isn't particularly offensive on its own, but the mid-range is completely obliterated, even more than normal, and there is this horridly bright, near sibilant upper end from 5 to 10 kilohertz. I saw 2 to 3 reviews mention that this had a flat sound signature, and I would have laughed if I weren't crying from the pain of the hi-hat sizzles, the snare snaps, the high-octave piano and synths, and even violins. They just sound so shrill and fatiguing. If you're not 60 years old and deaf as a doornail, you're likely to find yourself wishing that they were a bit more tamed on the upper end. The fatiguing trebles, in conjunction with the near distorted, bump to high heaven Beats by Dre bass, makes these annoying to listen to. For me. Preference. And then once you pepper in the fact that there's some of the worst dynamic range I've heard in a while, I mean, every single instrument and vocalist is the exact same level. Everything is exactly the same and there is no separation until you push the cans to about 90% volume, at which point they're too loud. It's no wonder that my ears hurt and the ear pads are itchy. Now, before I get the comments that say, well, of course they're not going to be as good as the AirPods Max, they're a lot cheaper. I'm not comparing them to the AirPods Max. To hell if I know why anyone has made that comparison thus far anyways, because beyond both being made by Apple, they are completely different headphones in different prices and market segments. The PX7, the XM5, and QC45 eat the beats for lunch, but they are all a little bit more pricey. So let's take the Sennheiser Momentum 4. These are headphones often found for less than $300. That's less money than the Beats Studio Pro. Subjectively, I find these headphones more comfortable. Objectively, they have a much better sound signature. Their multi-point Bluetooth support is significantly more modern. They have twice the battery life. They have better controls. They don't creak every time you touch them. There's USB-C lossless support, just like the Beats. That's right, Apple didn't invent wired headphones. There's an app, and wait, never mind. They don't have Find My. So they're disqualified. Look, the Beats Studio Pro are clearly not my favorite headphones, but they're not horrible. And if you buy them, as long as you don't admit to yourself that they look crappy and sound crappy and are crappy, you'll be happy. Stay snazzy.